Food. It's not just what we eat, it's the cornerstone of who we are. Building communities, driving industries, and satisfying one of our most basic instincts.
Oh boy, ham!
Look around the Smithsonian and you'll see food everywhere.
Down you go.
From the most popular cafes
Do you know what's in the corn pone, ma'am?
Corn.
to the most isolated vaults. Folks here make it their business to know all about what we eat and how we eat it. They're tracing the history of ancient culinary traditions, charting the rise of the modern food industry, and even teaching us the science behind eating well.
Hi there, I'm Tom Cavanagh, and I'm about to raid the fridge of the world's largest museum complex. So get ready to sample a cornucopia of tasty morsels from the incredible edible Smithsonian.
Study any subject, and you can't help running into food. It pops up in unexpected places, like art, and even philately, the study of stamps.
The glue on the back of postage stamps is derived from corn and potato starch. It's not just edible, it's vegetarian and fat-free.
The Smithsonian is a food lover's paradise. From their amazing lunchbox collection, to food you can eat at zero gravity, to chow time at the National Zoo. There are countless ways to learn about food here.
Get food specific to Eastern Seaboard Nation Capital. Come get your foods!
But there comes a time when our hunger for knowledge turns into plain old hunger.
Don't worry, I got that covered. You're looking to grab a bite after a long day at the museum? Follow me. I know a place. Let's eat!
The National Museum of the American Indian celebrates indigenous cultures from the northern reaches of Canada to the tip of South America. And at their acclaimed restaurant Mitsitam Café, you don't just get a great meal, you get a taste of Native American history and learn a few surprises about some of our favorite foods. The name of this place says it all. Mitsitam is a word in the language of the local Delaware and Piscataway peoples. It translates as simply, let's eat.
I knew that. I took a semester of Piscataway in high school.
It's like an atlas you can feast on, with dishes from South America,
Yellow and green squash gazula, not bad.
from the northern woodlands,
Cornmeal crusted fried frog legs.
and the northwest coast,
I don't know if I recommend the grilled razor clam salad. Ow! Ooh! Eek!
not to mention Mesoamerica and the Great Plains.
This lady's getting the buffalo burger. A smart choice. A smart choice. I've had it myself.
I have too, at Wounded Knee.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
You had a buffalo burger at Wounded Knee?
Yes.
I can't top that. That's fantastic.
We'll be going behind the scenes to discover the foods that fed the original Americans and how some of those flavors conquered the world. But before we do that, we're going to learn about the rich culture surrounding one of Mitsitam's signature dishes. So I've come here to the museum's Cultural Resources Center, which houses thousands of artifacts currently not on display. My guide and writing partner is curator Emil Her Many Horses. He's pulled a selection of artifacts that help tell the story of the Northwest Coast Indians, a story where salmon plays a central role.
This piece is a contemporary wood carving by Tim Paul, a Northwest Coast artist. And what it depicts is the ancestors watching over the salmon run.
I see.
So that the salmon arrive in the village at the same time each year.
It was a stark matter of survival. A bountiful salmon harvest would feed a community for an entire year. So they developed some highly specialized tools to ensure a good catch.
Well, now, I can understand the spikes at one end. The spikes at two ends, it feels like you'd have a problem if you did one of these. There's one. Oh!
You have to be a very skilled person to operate this. These two are called salmon killers, which are used to probably render the salmon unconscious and then pull it out of the water.
Or what the salmon called it, big death from above.
Yeah.
The salmon would be smoked, dried, pickled, you name it. But that's not all.
For native peoples, they never really wasted anything. They try to utilize everything. In our exhibits, you will see some of the parkas that are made out of salmon skin.
The salmon were so essential to the tribe's survival that they became a key element of their spirituality and communal identity. And paying respect to the salmon took many forms.
This is a dance cape, and when these pieces are danced, you're asking for the salmon to come back in plenty, that they come back the next year. And so you're always paying respect to these animals.
In order to sustain the community.
Exactly.
Many native cultures honored the animals and crops that ensured their livelihood. Bison were central to the lives of the Great Plains Indians, and corn was sacred to many native groups, from the Dakota to the Inca. Back at the American Indian Museum's cafe, Mitsitam, they're celebrating these native foods and flavors.
Hey, Rich!
Executive Chef Rich Hetzler is going to show us how he recreates traditional dishes and serves them with a modern twist.
Are we wearing the whites?
Yes.
Where can a fella like me get some of them?
Right behind you, we got you ready to go.
They're always too prepared. Ready?
We're ready.
Lead on.
Let's cook.
That's to me, I'm not here. All right, what do we got here? This looks to me like, I'm no expert, smoked salmon.
Well, similar, cedar plank salmon.
Cedar plank salmon.
Exactly.
Of course.
They cook the salmon the authentic way, over an open fire.
Taking this.
And like many of the ingredients they use, this wild salmon comes fresh from Native American
Go
suppliers.
to town with
Is this the way that the Native Americans would cook their salmon?
They actually would. They would do like a kited salmon, which is a very similar method to this, where they would take cedar trees, split them down the center, and put the salmon between the tree, and then use the shims to hold it, and then basically sit it right by a fire.
And why is that? It makes it a unique taste, a good taste?
It does. You get you get the freshness, and typically what they would do is they would do about 50 salmon at one time. So they would cook it that way, and then they would dry it, and they'd have it for weeks on end.
But while the salmon in this corn pone are cooked up the traditional way, other classic Native American fare is given a contemporary spin. These cuts of elk are stuffed with a creamy concoction of corn and roasted tomato. To call this food Native American doesn't just refer to a style of cooking. You may be surprised to learn that many of the foods that have conquered the globe actually come from the Americas. Potatoes were first discovered and cultivated not in Ireland, but in Peru. Chili peppers hail from the Americas as well. The same goes for squash. And the most delectable food on earth, chocolate. Which happens to be at the heart of the dish we're going to make today with Rich, the classic Mexican mole.
So we're going to use this little piece of equipment right here. Very traditional. It's called a molcajete.
A molcajete.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And
this
you
is from
see-
the
Mesoamerican.
Mesoamerican.
This is made out of lava stones. So this is something
Really?
traditionally that they would have used to grind because they didn't have what we have today, which are fancy dancy coffee grinders. But I'm not going to let you use that. You got to do it traditionally.
No, we got to go the old-fashioned way.
And if you're too slow, I'll actually use this thing.
So, I guarantee we'll be using that thing.
Fly out of it.
What makes a mole is chocolate.
Look at that.
And chocolate didn't originate in Belgium or Switzerland or even Hershey, Pennsylvania. It was first cultivated over 3,000 years ago by the ancient peoples of Mesoamerica, who drank it spicy, not sweet, and with a tall froth. Triple skinny mocha Mesoamericano, anyone?
You're a professional. Look at that.
I know. You know what I'm doing right now? Acting.
Essentially what we're doing here is we're going to stew everything together.
This cashew and guava mole is the descendant of a dish which likely originated in late 17th century Mexico.
Some annatto spice, the dried seed of a flower.
Oh, it's very pungent.
Yeah.
While chocolate is the main attraction, there are still plenty of other flavors at play in this Mexican barbecue.
Mexican cinnamon stick.
Cinnamon stick.
Yes.
We even add more chocolate, a Mexican variety that comes peppered with spices.
We're going to throw our cashews in there, and then the annatto. Traditionally, the carrots, onions would have to cook down. They'd have to be pureed or mashed in the molcajete, put to the side. Then the chilies would have to be mashed. You make your chili paste, put that to the side. So everything was done in steps. It was never like everything went into the pot. And then when everything was done, then they would turn around and they would have their chicken stock or the broth, whatever they were using, and then the paste would go back into it, and that's what would finish up their mole. Then that would slow cook for about 2 days. They didn't have the little tricks we have to thicken it.
This batch of mole is going to take 12 hours to cook. But if your mission is to create authentic native food, it's worth the wait.
People come to the museum, and this is a representation of what the museum is, just in food.
Right, so it's a nice marriage of content.
Exactly. They get to try Native American foods in a Native American building in a Native American museum. After seeing, everything the museum has to offer, this kind of completes the experience for them.
So now we wait for the mole.
The mole,
12 hours, probably about 11 hours now to wait.
Yeah.
So I guess we just wait.
Just kind of wait.
Well, I gotta run before this mole comes out of the oven. But if you've got time to visit the cafe, I bet there'll be a plate of this sumptuous Mexican barbecue with your name all over it.
How many more museums are we visiting today? 14? Sounds good.
Hey, Mac, it's about that time.
But before we go on, let's stop what we're doing and take part in that time-honored infusion of sugar, fat, and caffeine.
Time for coffee.
As long as people have been working, so pretty much forever, we've been taking breaks to socialize and refuel. But by the mid-20th century, thanks to industrialization and the unions that came with it, that break became part of most labor agreements. And getting a few minutes off, partway through a shift, became a staple of American life. The coffee break.
And nothing says break in the action quite like a coffee and a donut. And if you think I'm going to make some comment about our brave law enforcement professionals, you can forget it.
Here at the National Museum of American History, they have a fascinating collection of artifacts that trace not just our enthusiasm for coffee and donuts, but a 20th century revolution in the way food was created, distributed, and marketed. But first, a few milestones in our unfolding love affair with coffee. 1668, coffee replaces New York City's favorite breakfast drink, beer. 1773, the Boston Tea Party makes drinking coffee a patriotic duty. 1900, Hills Brothers begins packing roast coffee in new high-tech vacuum-packed tins. Archivist John Fleckner is going to tell us more about this groundbreaking, no pun intended, moment in coffee history.
Tom?
John!
Tom.
That is,
How are
as
you?
soon as I find him.
Yeah.
John!
Yo.
Boy, a fella can get lost in here.
Well,
How are
we
ya?
need to know. Good to
Great
see
to
you.
see you. Thanks for having me in the vault.
Yeah, a pleasure.
John's got a collection that traces the rise of Hills Brothers, one of the first companies to mass produce and market coffee.
A big breakthrough is when they licensed the use of a new vacuum packing technology so that you can vacuum pack the ground coffee and it will last for
And it
a
will stay
very long
fresh.
time. It'll stay fresh.
And when you do have that, now you have the capacity to really expand your business, which is what happened with these guys.
Testing.
But to produce on a grand scale, they still had to find a way to control the quality of their brew.
And they have a boast here. It's
That's
perfect
right.
flavor, never changes.
And that's a critical part of most mass production
You
foods
know
is-
what you're gonna
Right,
get.
Right.
By the 1930s, Hills Brothers had developed an elaborate production process to ensure the quality and flavor of each can of coffee. It was all about picking the perfect blend of beans and roasting them at a constant temperature. And at every stage of the process, trained coffee testers weeded out the bad roast from the good. Talk about a job that needed a coffee break. At the end of the line, their patented vacuum machines locked in the coffee's freshness.
This is the vacuum chamber. All day long it goes plump, 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 plump.
The Hills Brothers weren't the only ones applying industrial methods to food production. In the early 20th century, food increasingly became something invented, not just grown and cooked. And one such invention was the perfect complement to coffee, the Krispy Kreme donut.
You might have heard of that.
My response to that is,
Yeah.
It's the same reaction most people have when they see that Krispy Kreme beacon at the side of the road. Like Hills Brothers, Krispy Kreme started small with one shop and one special donut recipe. But as they expanded, it was harder to make sure the donuts they were selling store to store were consistent.
This is 30 cents.
So what did they do? They invented a special machine so that each store could produce perfect donuts every time.
They didn't just invent a specific donut, they invented a way of making their specific donut.
That's right. They developed this machinery right in the factory, the same place where they're making the mix. In part of the factory, they're developing the equipment, creating it, manufacturing it, and then sending it out to their franchise.
The original Ring King Jr., as this first breakthrough donut cloning machine was called, is actually in the Smithsonian collections at an off-site facility. But sadly, our request to fill it with hot grease and make a batch of donuts was denied. Like all good businesses, Krispy Kreme kept expanding, as did their donut-making machines, which churned out a steady army of donuts locked in two-step and glazed to perfection. But it's not just about making the perfect donut. It's knowing how to sell it. Branding is an industry and an art form, and Krispy Kreme is historically significant for both.
It's iconic. We see those colors, we know exactly what that is. I don't have to actually read Krispy Kreme. The image itself suggests it instantaneously.
Right. You just see the outline of it.
Which has to be exactly what you're looking for when you do any kind of brand marketing.
That's right.
And this kind of brand recognition didn't come easy as more and more mass-produced goods entered the market. And therein lies the rub. A hot donut, fresh coffee, to be enjoyed not just on your coffee break, but anytime, anywhere. What's not to like about that?
Sweet nectar of the gods.
Or any other convenience we enjoy as a result of the food revolution.
Keep your eye on the chocolate cupcake. It rises faster than you can eat it.
Yet some would argue that mass production has resulted in a plethora of processed foods, which, to put it plainly, probably ain't that good for us.
To all you kids out there, be careful, because eating too many sugary donuts can give you a cavity. And then what?
Will everybody in the audience please run the tip of his tongue over his teeth, just to get into the spirit of the story, please? That's right. Thank you. Just like that.
Food wouldn't nearly be so fun to eat without any teeth. And taking care of our teeth is serious business with a long history. So I've come to the Dr. Samuel D. Harris National Museum of Dentistry. There's a mouthful. A Smithsonian affiliate in Baltimore.
This might look like a museum devoted exclusively to our pearly whites, but if you think about it, it's really a museum about food and how we bite, taste, and chew the stuff we love to eat. And liverwurst.
This place is everything you ever wanted to know about teeth. George Washington's dentures? Check. Queen Victoria's toothpaste? Of course, you old chap. Cylinder of saliva? Yes.
600 milliliters of saliva, which, incidentally, is what our mouth generates daily. That's right.
Yes, there is much to chew on in this museum. And to help us digest all this dental data is curator Scott Swank.
Scott, how is it that you were so wise in the ways of dentistry?
Well, I'm a dentist.
You are a full-fledged practicing dentist?
Yes, I was practicing for
what, 4 days?
8 or 9 years.
What? 8 or 9 years? Are you serious?
Yeah.
So you're the perfect man for the job.
I hope so.
Here's the thing. Everyone knows cavity's bad. How exactly does a cavity occur? It's not just because you eat sugar.
No, you need 3 things. You've got to have a tooth, sugar.
That's why he's good at the job. So tooth, sugar, and bacteria.
Right.
Myth number 1, sugar causes cavities. But now you know that sugar and bacteria get together to produce an acid that forms cavities. Well, apparently the cause of tooth craters has long been the stuff of legend. For thousands of years, the prevailing belief was that cavities were caused by tooth worms. One popular treatment was fumigation, which, not surprisingly, didn't force out any worms, but often sent the patient into a hallucinatory haze. Lest we fall prey to the tooth worm's wrath, we have invented every teeth-cleaning implement, potion, paste you can imagine. And in the museum's vault, Scott's got even more dental accoutrements, including a few special incarnations of one of the earliest tools.
We've got personal toothpicks.
Personal toothpicks?
These would have been carried by individuals.
I have to tell you, these are all extremely ornate, are they not?
These would have been upper Victorian class.
Now, if you're at a party, say, would it be something, is it a bit of a status symbol? You pull out your fancy homemade toothpick and you're like, well,
the fancier the toothpick,
I saw the horse race. As a matter of fact, I thought it was a bit dull. Dull as dishwater. Did they have dishwater back then in the Victorian age? Sure they did.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course they did.
This is basically pre-toothbrush?
Not necessarily. There were toothbrushes in the
But was this a more accepted method of cleaning one's teeth?
The toothpick goes back farther than the toothbrush.
It does?
Yeah, probably. I mean, you can imagine cavemen
sure.
fashioning something to pick their teeth with, fish bones, all kinds of little things.
Despite what you might think, toothbrushing, let alone toothpicking, hasn't always been part of our daily regimen.
How are your teeth? Have you thought of them lately?
Apparently not, at least back in the 30s. Many Americans didn't brush their teeth regularly until after World War II. During the war, the Army enforced toothbrushing on their troops, a habit the soldiers then brought home where it caught on.
Downward on the upper teeth, count to 10. Upward on the lower teeth, 10 strokes again.
But throughout history, despite our best efforts at prevention, teeth still decayed, and this would often lead to the word no patient wants to hear from a dentist: extraction. So you've got a bunch of wine corks here.
Not exactly.
These are for taking teeth out?
Extraction keys.
Extraction keys.
Because they look like?
They look like keys.
A skeleton key.
I got it.
You got it?
Now we're getting to the good stuff.
You want me to show you?
Yeah, do I ever? Are you kidding me? This is awesome. It's like a horror movie.
All right, we'll show you how it works. So the patient points out the tooth that's bothering them. Put the key in. You get a hold of it.
My God.
You get it so that it holds on really well.
Yeah.
And then you turn it really quick.
Whoa! See, thank you. That's crazy. Are you kidding me?
That's how it works.
By the late 18th century, the key was the instrument of choice, designed for maximum speed and torque. These were quick.
These were quick.
So what were some of the other methods?
Well, forceps.
Duh. Does that involve kind of digging it out?
Well, you have to reach in, get a hold of it, and kind of move it around. And of course, without anesthesia, all that was causing pain. There were elevators, which kind of look like a screwdriver, basically. You know, so you wedge that in, and you're working the tooth loose with that. So you can imagine how long that would take.
Alas, it was a fact of life for our ancestors to have their rotten teeth removed without anesthetic. With the pain of extraction behind you, you faced a new problem: no teeth. The solution? Dentures. But most early dentures didn't fit very well, which meant that they weren't very helpful for eating. So principally these would be for looks?
Principally for looks.
You didn't want like one of these things coming off in a hunk of chicken. That's always embarrassing at a dinner party, I can tell you. But then hopefully you got a fancy toothpick and you can just say, well, I've got a gold plated toothpick, so who's making fun of who now? I don't know about you, but when I think false teeth, I think wooden teeth. And then I think George Washington. Did George Washington really have wooden teeth?
No.
Oh.
Sorry to burst your bubble, but George Washington did not.
Well, this is the
have
thing you
wooden
hear
teeth.
from age 2. People always telling you, George Washington,
Exactly.
wooden teeth. He didn't.
No.
Our first president's dentures were usually made of ivory, like this set of choppers.
Washington liked dark wines and ivory stains. So his wine of choice would have stained his teeth, and the ivory stains in varying degrees, just like wood does. After he had worn them a few years, they may have picked up some of that stain, and it could have looked a bit wooden.
I see.
You can imagine the
Wooden or otherwise, if dentures weren't going to help you chew your food, what was a hungry human to do back then?
And this is an instrument that would chew your food for you.
Really?
This is known as a masticator.
So that's a masticator.
And you put your food in.
Oh my goodness.
So then all you had to do was pretty much swallow it.
Well, you think we have it bad? Think again. Look at the size of this thing. It's great. Because after seeing rack after rack of intimidating tools used on our animal brethren, I think we should pause and thank heaven for the invention of modern anesthesia. Ah, yes. I know what this is. Ether was used as a surgical anesthetic as early as 1846.
Oops.
Yeah.
But when Novocaine first hit the market in 1905, our experience in the dentist chair changed forever.
I've taken a lot from my visit to the National Museum of Dentistry. This thing was really giving me trouble. I'm kidding. It's Paul Bunyan's tooth. I've also learned that if I want to continue eating sugary treats and the 16 packets of beef jerky I consume every day, I must brush and floss regularly.
So you see, you can eat your way through the Smithsonian. But eating in the vaults? No. Whether it's learning about authentic American food, getting the scoop on your favorite snacks, or if you just needed a gentle reminder to brush and floss, they've got it all here.
If we truly are what we eat, we better understand what we eat, be it the product of incredible innovation or a culinary pleasure passed down through the ages. Bon appetit.